Story 1. I always thought that when movies or TV shows feature someone talking in their sleep and they just spout random, silly nonsense, it was mostly for comedic effect and wasn't really a reflection of real life. Nope. My partner talks in his sleep, and it's always just absolute random, silly nonsense. The most recent one was, in a tone of dismay, "There's ice cream all over the stairs," followed by a drawn-out "bro." He also just periodically giggles in his sleep, which, frankly, is one of the most adorable things I've ever seen from another human. Story 2. He gets a weird feeling in his stomach and then goes to sit on the toilet for an hour until he has a bowel movement. I apparently wait until I get the cue to go to the bathroom before actually attempting, as I thought was normal. He quite literally made fun of me yesterday for kicking him off the toilet. "You made me get up to only take 30 seconds? Dude, you've been in there for 45 minutes, and clearly nothing was happening if you could just let me in like that." Story 3. In the middle of the night, I wake up to him having both of his arms straight in the air like a zombie. If I lay too close to him when he does this, I get a surprise when he inevitably drops his arms down. Story 4. She hoards blankets in every way, shape, and form. It's not intentional. They just manifest around her in a blanket fort, and I'm all for it. We have individual blankets and a top comforter for the bed, though, so no stealing of my blanket at night. Story 5. He sleeps like a vampire, sleeping on his back with his arms straight by his sides or folded on his chest every single night. Some nights he doesn't even change his position at all. I was seriously concerned during the first couple of nights we slept in the same bed. Story 6. He will occasionally, usually when I'm not around to be appalled, eat dry tortellini straight out of the bag when he's reading in bed. Dry tortellini. Story 7. That it's apparently totally normal to leave every cupboard open. I love her more than life, but man, is it annoying. Edit. Yes, she has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. We both do. Story 8. My boyfriend essentially needs blizzard conditions to sleep. Ceiling fan, side fan, completely naked. Sometimes he puts an ice pack under his pillow and plays blizzard sound effects through his earphones to fall asleep. If I'm there, he also constantly hugs, squeezes, or wraps himself around me. We only lived together for a week at a time before, as I need basically the opposite conditions: warm, layered pajamas, untouched, silence. We're not compatible to share a sleeping space. So, in a couple of months, we're getting a 2-bedroom place together so we both get to sleep and not want to murder each other. Story 9. She has to have a kettle of water on the stove at all times. She rarely uses the kettle. It is in case the power goes out and the well pump stops. We have city water service. Story 10. He wakes up every night to find something to eat from the fridge while half asleep and drops food all the way from the fridge back to bed. Sometimes he even leaves cutlery in the fridge. Story 11. She does not fully close cabinets or lids. She will leave out a jar of anything, such as jelly or peanut butter, and give the lid a quarter turn, then call it a day. Story 12. How unbelievably and almost uniquely normal she is. She has no drama, no family issues, no trauma-induced fetishes. She likes Superman and loves people for who they are. She's mild-mannered and kind, loves animals. Like she has zero crazy. We've never raised our voices to one another in 9 years together. Coming from 30 years of chaotic relationships, it's still a little unsettling to me sometimes. We've been married 7 years now, and I still wait for the crazy to pop up. But there very well may just not be any. She's the definition of a breath of fresh air every day. Story 13. This was in the 1990s. He only had 3 CDs in his living room. I asked where the rest of his music was. He said he didn't own any more because he doesn't really like music. How had this topic never come up before? Story 14. He farts nonstop. Just won't stop. I call him my little gas station. Edit. You all are taking this way too seriously in the replies. Go study proctology somewhere else. Story 15. My partner was born and raised in a developing nation and has only lived in the United States about 5 years, so the cultural differences have been pretty interesting in terms of lifestyle. You think you have a decent idea of the size of your privilege until you're presented with all the myriad ways your upbringing was totally different from theirs. He's intelligent and well-educated, so it just didn't occur to me how much of what I consider basic knowledge is dependent on experience and access to certain items. Some examples. He never had a car with cruise control in his home country and didn't know it existed. We were 12 hours into a 14-hour drive before I noticed he wasn't using it and asked why. As you can guess, he's a big fan. He knows our tap water is safe, but he still can't drink it without using a filter. It's too ingrained in him. Similarly, his country doesn't have water softeners, so I had to explain about those. He also never had a dishwasher before, so trying to get him to use ours instead of washing the dishes by hand has been a challenge. I feel like they get cleaner in the dishwasher, and he feels like they get cleaner when hand-washed because it's what each of us is used to. At the end of the day, they get cleaned, so it doesn't matter. Despite cooking for himself since he was a child, he doesn't know a lot of what I consider basic cooking skills. He had a hot plate and a microwave, and that was it. Apart from cooking oil, there wasn't money for things that helped with the cooking process. Any herbs or sauces were chosen for strong flavor to hide the taste of ingredients that were bland or even a little past their prime in cheapness. He prefers much stronger flavors than I do as a result, but he's also been extremely receptive to everything I've taught him to make so far. Story 16. She leaves small amounts of food in their containers instead of finishing them off. Cereal, chips, milk, and so on. It is infuriating. I have been putting up with it for 18 years. It is not worth fighting over. I know that if I really want something to eat, I expect it not to have a serving's worth before I open it. And once she gets it that low, she will not finish it off. I either finish it or throw it away. Story 17. That my husband has been mispronouncing his own last name for his entire life. His mother says it differently than he does, and his paternal grandmother said it differently than he did. So I joke that I have a variable last name. Story 18. Most of these top discoveries are negative, so I'm going to add a positive. She is capable of reversing her sleep schedule as needed. I've had the same sleep schedule for decades, and she just makes up new ones when needed. Story 19. The entire family overestimates their hunger all the time. They always fill the plate to the brim with food, eat only half, and leave the plate near the sink without even disposing of the leftover food. It is disgusting to look at those plates. The entire family, not just the partner. Story 20. The snot shirt. When he gets any kind of respiratory sickness, he takes a shirt out and puts it on his nightstand and blows his nose in it during the night. He says it is cheaper and softer than tissues. Story 21. That she's sweating all over the bed. But that isn't a problem for me. The big issue here is that she's neglecting the fact that she's the one doing it and won't change the sheets. Story 22. My boyfriend sleep talks, yells, sings, and laughs. I've woken up in a panic thinking someone was breaking in because he had yelled at the top of his lungs, "What are you doing here?" Just to look over seconds later and see him with his eyes closed and mouth wide open. Story 23. The folding of linens cracks me up. My wife had a very abusive upbringing and first marriage. Her quirks are really trauma responses to keep her safe and gave her quite a bit of anxiety early in our relationship. We've been together almost 4 years, and she is now comfortable passing gas in front of me and my kids. Doesn't worry about dishes being done immediately. I enjoy doing them, which surprises her, and other random things. She's safe now. The weirdest thing about her is that she eats all the toppings and cheese off of pizza with a fork, and then the crust and remainder of the slice by hand. Story 24. Bro. Oh my God. So, my current partner is amazing. I have never found anything that made me go, "What the heck?" He's very normal, which I very much appreciate. My ex had some extremely weird stuff in his apartment that I had no idea about until I randomly found it one day, not even looking for it. One day while deep cleaning his kitchen, I pulled out his silverware drawer and removed the thing that separates the silverware so I could clean it. Underneath it, shoved into the very back of the drawer, was a pill bottle with matches and little slips of papers that had names, addresses, and phone numbers. I recognized some of the names and didn't understand why he had this information. I think it was a hit list. You'd have to know the situation more to get that one, though. I found papers upon papers of random people's names and social security numbers. The big pillow he had sitting on his floor that was kind of used as a beanbag was filled with his ex-girlfriend's clothes. I had been sitting and sometimes even sleeping on that pillow, and it was just incredibly weird. He ended up almost killing me. He went to jail last summer for stalking his most current partner. I felt like I would have had that issue if I didn't have a very large family and a ton of brothers that had already shown up on him before. Story 25. That he can't tell the difference between facts and his opinion. They are one and the same to him, and he's very opinionated. I thought he was a very clever man. I was wrong. Story 26. He's the mostly normal one. I'm the weirdo laughing out loud. He's caught me talking to inanimate objects several times, but the joke's on him when there is a machine uprising, and the toaster spares me because I was always kind to it. Story 27. We have a shoe rack. He has never used it. He prefers instead to discard his shoes in a semicircle around the front door like a booby trap for me. His incredibly clumsy fiancé. I love him even though my life is constantly at risk. Story 28. She threw all of her daily contact lenses behind her headboard, and I don't think she ever intended to clean them up because there were about 300 of them back there. Story 29. She snored like an asthmatic wild boar with a 60-a-day habit. It was disconcerting, to say the least, to see this pretty raven-haired beauty cause the lampshades to vibrate. Story 30. A while ago, my partner at the time was a surgeon. After moving in, I found she had terrible hygiene and used to sneeze without covering her mouth. At least once, she sneezed, and I felt sneeze moisture spray hit my skin. It was like I had a child sitting next to me. It was also around the time swine flu had become a concern. At one point, I got really sick, possibly with swine flu, and she kept saying, "When can I kiss you again? I won't get sick." For someone who works as a surgeon, her lack of awareness or care for hygiene and disease transmission was incredible. This was a major factor in my decision to end things. Story 31. They can speak Carney because their grandfather was a little person in show business and various other public-facing careers. He taught his daughters to speak it as a means to talk about others collectively without them knowing, and his daughters taught it to all of their daughters. Finding out was pretty random because it was the first time meeting that side of her family. I heard her cousins and aunts all speaking nonsense and just thought it was a funny thing to take note of. It wasn't until I asked her in private, laughing that her aunts and cousins are insane, and asked what was going on, that she revealed she could speak it too but hadn't in a while because she was never around that side of the family that much. Story 32. He bobs his head when he plays the PlayStation and is very focused. I recorded it in slow motion one day to show him. He apparently knows he does it. I never knew until we got our second apartment together. Story 33. But it blew my mind that he was around 37 and still didn't have a specific place or home for his keys and wallet when he got home from work or wherever. He just randomly placed them in two separate spots, never the same spot. Panic ensued every single morning. Wild. Story 34. So, when my husband and I moved in together, after various roommates and housing jumps, we ended up with a collection of can openers. But only one was any good, as it happens. I do a lot of can-heavy cooking, so I'd usually end up pulling 2 or 3 openers out, trying them until I find the one that can do all the work I needed. I'd put the extras aside, intending to ask him his thoughts on how to handle it. They still can be used, so I didn't want to toss them out, but it's too much work to use them for multiple cans at once. But always I'd forget and he would clean the dishes and end up putting those away. We moved across the country together. We were engaged when he finally asked, "Why do you use one can opener per can when you cook?" That was how he interpreted the empty cans and piles of can openers. That I was some oddball that didn't want to cross-contaminate my cans when opening them, and he was fully prepared to marry into that perceived craziness. Story 35. Often when I am in the shower, he has to go poop immediately. It is like a weird and effective laxative for him. I am not as big of a fan, and I do not think he even realizes. Story 36. She enjoys hosting dinners with a fully set table. Every night, I feel like I am in a restaurant enjoying the most delicious and creative 4-course meal I could never have imagined. Story 37. When my wife moved in, she brought this blue enameled stainless steel dinner plate with her. She used to eat off it all the time. I asked her about it once, and she was just like, I just like it. All right, 1840s cartoony prospector, mine your gold. Anyway, about a decade into our relationship, we bought a house and moved in. The plate, by this time, was battered. I started calling it Rusty the tetanus plate because the enamel coating had worn through, and I was beginning to worry it was unsanitary for actual real. While we were packing up to move, we were sorting things into boxes and what was going in the dumpster or to the new house. My wife slowly picked up that enameled plate, a single tear on her cheek, and lowered it gently into the garbage. I actually don't know if that's what happened. I was cackling over some club magazines I'd stashed when we were just married, from back when pornography was about the art, damn it. I didn't notice it was gone until we got to the new house, and I was sad to see it gone. I asked, and she was like, Rusty had to go. At this point, you're all like, go get her another one, idiot, and stop backseat driving. Obviously, I did that. Way before you even heard the story, so who's the idiot now? Yeah, you. But it had to be the right one. Took years, but I finally found another, almost exactly the same, in an antique shop. I gave it to her for some event I can't recall. Birthday, something. Doesn't matter. But man, she cried so much, and I want to now just thinking about it. Still in the cabinet.